Oh, hey you! I'm just finishing up some yard work, but I'm about to go inside and make some pumpkin pierogies. You interested in learning how? Alright, awesome. Let's go get started. Oh yeah, and don't forget to leave this video a like. Thanks! To begin this dish, it's best to begin by caramelizing the onions. For that, you will need 2 to 3 yellow onions, thinly sliced, and 1/2 tablespoon of olive oil. Heat the olive oil on a low heat. Add in onions, and allow them to cook, stirring occasionally throughout the process. You want to keep your heat very low, just enough so you can hear the onions sizzling. Onions should be finished by the time pierogies are done, when they have taken on a nice caramel color. Next, we're going to work on making the coconut bacon. For that, you will need 1 1/2 cup of large coconut flake, 1 tablespoon of gluten-free tamari, 2 teaspoons of liquid smoke, 2 teaspoons of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar, lastly salt and pepper to taste. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Mix all liquid ingredients in a medium-sized bowl with a whisk. Add in coconut and gently fold together to coat well. Be gentle so you do not break apart your coconut. Once coconut is coated, spread in an even layer on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Season with salt and pepper and bake until coconut becomes crispy, about 10 to 15 minutes. Once baked, remove from the oven and store in an airtight container unrefrigerated. Moving on to the dough, you will need 2 cups of all-purpose gluten-free flour. Mine had xanthan gum in it. 1/4 cup of pumpkin puree, 1/4 cup of almond or coconut yogurt, 1/4 cup of almond milk, 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and you will also need 1/4 cup of warm water. In a large bowl, add flour and salt. Stir with a whisk to combine, creating a well in the center of the flour. Add oil and pumpkin. Carefully mix oil and pumpkin together, being careful not to incorporate too much of the gluten-free flour. Add in the yogurt, and then mix more, continuing to be careful not to incorporate too much flour. Begin bringing in the flour while slowly adding in a small amount of warm water at a time, as well as your coconut milk. The dough should be slightly sticky, but not too bad. It should also not be overly crumbly. Wrap dough, then allow it to rest at room temperature for 30 minutes. Continue on to making the filling while the dough rests. For the filling, you will need 1 cup of pumpkin puree, 1 cup of prepared mashed potatoes, 1 shallot, small diced, 1 stalk of celery, small diced, 3 cloves of roasted garlic, 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, 1/2 teaspoon of ground sage, 1/4 teaspoon allspice, 1/2 tablespoon of olive oil, and you will also need salt and pepper to taste. To create the filling, heat olive oil in a separate medium-sized sauté pan. Keeping the heat on low, add shallot and celery. Cook until vegetables are tender. Add in the roasted garlic and thyme. Stir, continuing to cook until fragrant. Add in the pumpkin puree, and using its moisture, deglaze the pan. Add in prepared mashed potatoes, sage, and allspice. Stir well to combine, and then season with salt and pepper. Remove from heat and set aside. Moving back to our dough after it has rested 30 minutes. Lightly flour a work surface and divide the dough in half. Put half of the dough onto the floured work surface, and then re-wrap the other half and set aside. Carefully roll the dough with a rolling pin in one direction, and then in the other direction, until the dough is about 1/8 inch thick. Have a moist cloth set aside ready for the next step. Using a 3-inch cookie cutter, cut circles out of your dough. Remove the excess dough from around the outside, and use a spatula to move it aside to a greased baking or serving dish. Cover resting dough with the moist cloth. Continue until you cannot place any more circles of dough into your dish. With a bowl of water ready, place a fork in it. You will be using this fork to seal your pierogies. Place about 1 teaspoon of the filling into the center of your dough, and using your fingertips, dip them into the water of the bowl, and gently dab around the outsides to help seal. Very carefully, bring the dough over the filling, and then press gently with your fingers to create a seal. Using the lightly dampened fork, seal around the edges. Place the sealed pierogi into the greased dish from before. Keep these covered so the dough does not dry out. This dough is very delicate, so take your time when doing this step. If cracks form on the top of your pierogi, dip your fingers in water and gently moisten the pierogi to reseal. Next, bring salty water to a boil. Add about 6 pierogies at a time. Pierogies will float in about 1 to 2 minutes, but make sure to allow them to cook thoroughly through, about 5 minutes. Remove from the boiling water and replace in the greased container again. To finish your pierogies, you can heat a small amount of oil in a pan. Brown each side of the pierogi, and then serve immediately. Time to plate. Place a few pierogies down on your bowl or plate. Top with some caramelized onions and a little bit more of your coconut or almond yogurt. Sprinkle with coconut bacon, and your vegan, gluten-free pumpkin pierogies are done. Thank you so much for watching The Veggie Nerd. If you're new to my channel, my name is Eric. I'm a certified culinarian, and I make nerdy vegetarian lifestyle content. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on a future recipe. If you'd like to learn how to preserve green beans at home, check out my dried green bean video. I'll put that on the screen. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.